Hi, I'm J. Lenora Bressler, and welcome to the June 17, 2017 edition of The Bible, Delight in the Details. From Psalm 69, let their table before them become a snare, and when they are in peace, let it become a trap. Let their eyes be darkened, so they cannot see, and make their loins continually to shake. Pour out thine indignation upon them, and let the fierceness of thine anger overtake them. Let their habitation be desolate. Let none dwell in their tents. For they persecute him who thou hast smitten, and they tell of the sorrow of those whom thou hast wounded. Add iniquity unto their iniquity, and let them not come into thy righteousness. Let them be blotted out of the book of life, and not be written with the righteous. Well, that's from Psalm 69. And there are other Psalms that are very similar. These are called imprecatory Psalms. I always have to think a minute how to say that. Imprecatory Psalms are those that call for the destruction or punishment of someone else, the wicked. And many Christians, many people, period, believers or otherwise, really struggle with these Psalms because they do seem perhaps to some at first very discordant with the love and forgiveness, the agape love and tender mercies that we associate so much with the God of Judeo-Christian religion. So what are we to make of this? Well, first of all, I take some comfort in seeing these because, for one thing, many of them are attributed straight to David. And let us be blunt, who among us have not at times, especially when we were suffering unjustly, lashed out in frustration and in a sense of injustice at those who blatantly, continually, knowingly, willfully continue in doing evil things. It is again our sense of justice, which I truly believe comes to us straight from God. We are told in Genesis that we are made in the image of God. And what is that? I think part of that is some of those things that just seem to be almost part of the human condition, and us railing against injustice and feeling a sense of righteous indignation, I think is very appropriate. But it's more than that. In these imprecatory Psalms, there is an understanding that this is not just about personal revenge. In fact, it's not at all about personal revenge. It's about understanding that certain people are acting against God himself. And there is the righteous indignation of believers to defend the honor of God. When was the last time that you were righteously indignant because you felt that God's honor and character were being maligned? It should bother you. It should bother you deeply when that happens. Now, what are we to get out of these imprecatory Psalms today? It is to remind us of the severity with which God views sin and injustice, whether it's being done to himself, or whether it's being done to his people, or whether a man is trying to in some way thwart the will of God. Of course, we know that there are many examples in the Old Testament particularly where efforts were made to thwart the Messiah being able to come into the world. There were all kind of opportunities in which evil people tried to wipe out the Jewish people, thereby there would not be anyone from whom biologically the Messiah could come. And this is the righteous indignation of God. As my pastor always says, Jesus is not always the precious moments figurine of little baby Jesus, meek and mild. He's also the Jesus of walking into the temple with a whip in his hand, overturning tables and doing God knows what with that whip. There is a time in which God's wrath is going to be meted out. And the word wrath is very off-putting, I know, to many people. If you think of it more as righteous indignation, justified upset, I think you will have a better understanding of what is really here. Let me just read to you as we close here a few quotes from theologians, some of whom you will be very familiar with their names, about how they say we should view these precatory psalms. For example, let me get to it. Walter Kaiser has observed, these hard sayings of Psalms are not statements of personal vendetta, but are utterances for zeal for the kingdom of God and his glory. To be sure, the attacks that provoked these prayers were not from personal enemies. Rather, they were rightfully seen as attacks against God and especially his representatives in the line of the Messiah. C.S. Lewis also spoke to this. He said, the ferocious parts of the Psalms serve as a reminder that there is in the world such a thing as wickedness, and that it is hateful to God. Alexander McLaren says this to us modern believers. He says, perhaps it would do modern tenderheartedness no harm to be have a little more iron infused into its gentleness, and to lay to heart that the King of Peace must first be a king of righteousness. And finally, William Holiday put it this way: the call to love one's enemies must be exercised within the context of the claims of justice. If an injustice has been done, it needs to be made right. God has made a way for things to be put right. But we must remember that the reason for that is because he takes injustice and wickedness very, very seriously. And perhaps that, in the end, is the true lesson we should get from the imprecatory Psalms. I'm J. Lenore Bressler. Visit me tomorrow on the next edition of the Bible. Delight in the details. Have a great weekend.